Yeah, like the middle of Texas. And it's very hot here.
Yeah, I bet it is. I bet it's hot. It's the weather is awful here,
Oh, you're
but
very
that doesn't change much. It's always bad in England, so we'll go with it. Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Point podcast. Today, I'm here with Yolanda. Is that the correct way of saying it?
That's perfect. Yep.
Perfect. Yolanda Russell, and she is a dating coach and looks to me an all-round happy, uh, good vibes person. So I've got a lot of interesting questions. I'm very looking forward to this. So I'm going to kick off with the first one, your email and your podcast. What is a conscious hoe? What does that mean? Oh, I'm shaking. Camera.
Yeah. So a conscious hoe is contrary to it being used as something derogatory. It's actually all about self-development and empowerment. And it's HOE stands for a woman that is honoring and owning her empowerment.
Okay. So what do you think empowerment is?
I think of empowerment looks like trusting yourself and doing the things that you want to do and making sure it's always coming from this space of consciousness and that you're making decisions from an aware vantage point. And I think when I think of it, it's just becoming the best version of yourself, as cliche as that might sound.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like that. I think that the conscious word is a brilliant it's a genius combination of the word conscious hoe, because those two words stereotypically don't really go together, do they, in our
Yeah.
society? So I think that's a really I really like that idea. I had a look through your Instagram a bit, and it says that you were a nurse. Is that right? Or you said that you were a nurse.
Yeah.
So when did how did you get into that, and what drove you to decide to become a nurse?
Yeah, so as long as I can remember, I'm 30, I'll be 39 in October of this year. But as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to help people and just felt that was my purpose. And when I first went to college, I thought that I wanted to be a doctor. College kind of kicked my butt. And I was like, you know what? I'm really just over school. So I ended up changing my career path to nursing.
Mhm.
And then I did not become a nurse right away. I actually ended up in working in a lab. I was cutting circuit boards and testing them for the military, using my biology degree in a way, but it
Yeah.
just wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I ended up going back to school for nursing, worked full time, went to school full time, and then got my first nursing job. So it's a second career for me.
What do you mean it was a second career? As in it wasn't your...
Yeah, it wasn't my first, like the first thing that I did after college.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, very good. Yeah, you strike me as you would be a good nurse, wouldn't you? Extroverted and interested in people. That's pretty much what you need to be that's what you need to be a nurse.
Yeah.
So you are a dating coach. What does that mean, technically?
So yeah, technically it just means I help women or even men. There are men that follow my content and they're like, wow, I really relate to this. I know it's not for men, but really just helping women become the best versions of themselves. I think oftentimes when we look at dating and relationships, we get so focused on the other person and not so much on bringing our best versions to the table. And a lot of times that looks like needing to heal old traumas and patterns and thought processes that aren't serving you and having the best relationship with yourself and then ultimately with other people in the long run.
Yeah, because exactly healing yourself, because the unconscious signals that your unconscious will just emit signals, and you'll end up attracting people who align with you, even in ways that you don't necessarily want. So it all starts from the self, and then it sort of expands out from there. What's your opinion of modern dating? How is dating looking in 2023? I know I've got my opinion, but we'll go with you first.
Yeah, so I have been in a long-term relationship. I actually was engaged, have been with my partner for 6 years, and just started to have these feelings of, wow, this is good, but it's not great. And there was a lot of processing that had to go through that because, especially as you age and you get older, you think like, wow, have I lost all my best years? And I had just all these kind of thoughts. But being the conscious hoe and the creator of the conscious hoe, this actually kind of formulated from me ending that relationship, but always just being a person that's like, you know what, you should go do and listen to those nags that are on your heart. And so making that hard decision of, I need to step away from this. I love you, but this is not the thing anymore was really hard. And so, I think that in dating in 2023, I challenge people to change their mindsets because we don't really always understand just how our thoughts create our beliefs. And so it can get really easy. I probably went on 100 first dates. Like I just had so much fun. It wasn't always about being intimate with people, but you said being very extroverted. I just loved meeting with people. I've networked with some great people. Opportunities have come out of like things for me to help other people with their marketing just from meeting them on these first dates. And so I challenge people to look at dating as a way of improving your communication skills, your listening skills, and then going on that journey of self discovery. And technology, I think, really makes things interesting where people will put so much weight or value into the technical part of dating instead of actually going and showing up and getting to know people, quote, the old fashioned way.
That's all very interesting. Yeah, yeah. So you were in a 6 year relationship, and then you say you had these nags. Are those sort of sexual nags, or were they more exploratory nags of discovering yourself, as you say, or was it something else?
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you're in relationship and to anyone that might be going through a breakup, I would, it can be devastating and heartbreaking, but it can actually be one of the best things that you do for yourself. And in that relationship, I really started to deep dive in personal development, started going to Tony Robbins events and just surrounding myself with very different people and people that had very different thought processes, just more growth mindseted people. And it wasn't that my partner wasn't growth mindseted. He was a little bit older than I was. And we were in an age gap relationship. He was 14 years older than I am. And so it was just like where he had done a lot of the things that I was just starting to do in life and he was ready to kind of just like slow down. I'm like, wow, I feel like my life is just really gearing up. And it just became about looking at, is this actually in alignment with where I am and where it was that I personally wanted to go with my life?
Yeah, that's good. We can definitely talk about Tony Robbins a bit later. That's so cool that you've been to some of his events. I'd love to. I remember what I watched his
Yeah.
documentary. What is it? I'm Not Your Guru years ago, and I was like mesmerized by it.
Yep.
So that's brilliant. We'll definitely talk
Yep.
about that. So
Yeah.
um, bold question: is casual
Okay.
sex damaging?
I think it depends on the human.
I love that
I think
answer.
that
Brilliant.
I think that for some men, it can be damaging. I believe for some women, it can be damaging. I 100% have had my days of casual sex. And then I started to, again, being the conscious hoe, a woman that honors and owns her empowerment, I started to look at how I was using my body. And specifically when it came to men and sometimes sleeping with men, thinking, oh, this will make him like me more or keep him around. So I have my thoughts. I think it's something that for many of us, we have to discover and figure out. I don't think that there's this one golden rule about casual sex or just sex and intimacy in general. Again, I think most of the stuff that we'll go through in dating is about discovering what works for you and then becoming really truthful with yourself.
Yeah, I like that word. I like that word, truth. Truthful is the truth is so true, isn't it? You got to be true to yourself, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard to know what true to yourself is, and you might stumble around in the dark looking for your truth, but it's easier to know when
Yeah.
you're lying often than it is to know when you're telling the truth, isn't it? So yeah, you're right. Truth
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah, and I just always encourage people, if you are in these casual sex situations and maybe you love it. Like I had such a good time when I was single, and now I'm in a really happy partnership again. But I had so much fun, but it took a lot of reflecting. A lot of looking at my own actions and patterns, and then looking at how people were treating me in these casually sexual situations. And I believe that you can have casual sex, but there's a level of communication and connection, no matter how casual it is, that exists. And for me, at this point in my life, if I broke up with my boyfriend, I probably would go back through a stage of like, oh, wow, like just single and crazy. And then come back into that reflection. Is this actually really serving me and my greatest and highest good?
yeah. This is my snapshot uh, impression of you is that you probably have a temperament that can actually handle casual sex, I imagine, because where, as you said earlier, it's not for everyone. If I had to, from a personality point of view, you're obviously very extroverted and you're probably pretty open and creative, so, and probably pretty low in negative emotions. So all that leads itself to being able to engage in casual sex and not have it maybe pull you down a little bit or feel like you're being used a little bit. I know it's very, very tricky, so complicated, and I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I'm a 23-year-old kid who guy who's only had my experience, but I think that is I love what keeps going on in my head is the hoe, that what is it, the honorable, open and
Honoring and owning empowerment.
honoring and owning empowerment. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really good. So but yeah, fair play, 100%. Are you aware and are you experiencing the inequality that women have in the dating market, over the power that women have over men in the dating market, and how it's so much easier for women to get attention nowadays than it is for men? Or are you not experiencing that?
Um, well, yeah, I would say that, men are probably rejected far more than women are,
Yeah.
but women tend to, when we are the ones rejected, really take it on as this men are, douchey or not great people, and all these different ways that we can take that viewpoint. And I think we get to decide and choose how we want to look at that, right? So I think that the argument could be that it's easier for women maybe to land dates, but at the same time, harder all the same, if
Yeah.
that makes sense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because as a woman, if you are going on many dates, then maybe people think that you're promiscuous. And to me, going on a date does not equal sex.
No.
Going on a date is vibe checking with someone, seeing if you guys if your energies mesh well
No.
together. So, I mean, I think that we could argue that women have it easier, but at the same rate, maybe men do too.
What ways? What ways do you think men have it easier, in the sense that they take rejection less personal? Do you not think maybe they take rejection less personally because it happens more often, so they're desensitized to
Yeah,
it?
I think. Yeah, maybe they're a bit desensitized to it. I also think that there is, just the same way that women need to heal and go on the journey of themselves and finding themselves, men need to do this too, right? It's also very important for them to do.
Yeah.
And I say, I don't know. I'm not a man. I'm not in the psyche of a man, but I
Sure.
don't think that we are as different as we tend to believe we are. I think that there's a lot of societal things that foster into how men carry themselves, and they need to be strong, and that they need to not necessarily be in touch with their emotions because that might make them feel weaker. And there's nothing more attractive than a man that is doing his work, is going to therapy, is discovering himself. And I think that some of that is so looked down on society, especially in my age group of men, where I almost feel like Gen Z, the men in Gen Z, because they brought up with social media and they just have access to more tools and resources at their fingertips all the time, are actually a bit more evolved emotionally in comparison to some men that are 40 and 50 years old. Personal opinion.
That's a very good point. Yes. Yeah, I never thought of that. Fair play. Um, yeah, somewhat related. Do nice guys finish last? Now, I've seen some things
They
that
don't.
were into. Okay, yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I don't think that nice guys finish last for the woman that is in her truth, in her power, and ultimately knows what she wants. I think that the damaged woman, the broken woman, the inner child that's still hurt will always go and seek out things that don't feel great in her nervous system because she's used to being so dysregulated. And so then when you start to tap in and do the work and you go to therapy and you maybe go on a few plant medicine journeys or whatever that might look like for you, and you really start to get in touch with healing the inner child parts of you, then it's like you now have space for the nice guy.
I like that. I like that. That's a good point. One of the things that is pretty well documented now is that young women are far more likely to fall prey to men who are high in dark triad traits, which are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And then as they get older, because those guys, they mimic confidence can often be mistaken for competence. And, the narcissistic charm can often be quite alluring. But then as women get older, they become more aware of what to truly look out for and what needs to be seen as red flags to use a cliche. Do you see that cropping up a bit?
Yeah, I think it's very different. I do believe as you age and you become more wise in general and you have more experiences that there is a lot of truth in that. But there are some women that, get married at 24, 25, find themselves exiting these long-term relationships in their mid 30s and they are not necessarily as emotionally mature even, or they haven't done that inner work that they still need to do, and so they may be presenting as these younger versions of themselves in an older person's body.
Okay, yeah. So they're manifesting possible behaviors that they weren't capable of manifesting when they were younger because of being in a relationship. Is that kind of what you mean? So it comes out when they're older.
Yeah, potentially, or it's that if you aren't aware and you haven't done that work to, like for me, I grew up without my father, right? So there can be a lot of people that will say, oh, there's these daddy issues and the way that that presents. And for me, it showed up as extreme avoidance, pushing people away, not letting people get close to me, really being someone that would give people like these hot and cold signals all the
Yeah.
time. And so I've done that all my life. And then it wasn't until I just went on that self-development journey and really started to dig deep into, wow, why am I this way? Why do I act this way? And then getting into therapy and really working through some of that stuff. So I don't know that age really even matters so much as it's more of going on the journey and looking at and becoming really aware of the things that you need to heal within yourself. And this sounds so cliche or so like maybe spiritual or woo woo, but to me, it's the facts.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Do you know? I love this. So 50 Shades of Grey and like
Yeah.
365 Days and Bridgerton. Have you got Bridgerton in the States? Do you know what Bridgerton is? It's like a period, really big.
It's a TV show, right?
Yeah, it's a really big period drama. So all these shows and films and books, because 50 Shades is a novel, are like really, really popular with women. and they all follow the same narrative, which is young, innocent, attractive girl meets powerful, slightly psycho looking, mysterious man who's probably got a troubled past, maybe abused by a parent, who is now very powerful, and the woman becomes infatuated with him and thinks that she can change him or tame him, which is why Beauty and the Beast is also the same narrative, because that's what Belle does. Do you get a lot of women thinking that they can change a man and they can't?
Absolutely. It is not our job to change anyone except for ourselves. And I think when you wake up to that notion that you will only hurt yourself in the long run when you stay in these situations that are not fulfilling, right? I think as women we do want to nurture, but it's not your job in a partnership to be a man's therapist or his healer or his mother. The job is to be a partner and to have space for your partner to do what they need to do internally to become the best versions of themselves, but they have to want that for themselves. And I do think a lot of women will get trapped in these situations where they see we see the inherent good in people, but we don't see what they're actually presenting. And I think that will lead you down that path of heartache, despair, needing years and years of therapy because of relationship, because you have this massive thought of I can change someone, and that change all comes from someone else. Now, if you meet someone and they want to change their habits and be a better person for you, that's on them to do. But we can't force that.
No, you don't want to be someone's mother, do you? I think that's
No, absolutely not.
absolutely not. No, of course. Um, yeah. Are kind of a contrary question. Are women's standards too high in 2023?
Hmm. I believe your standards are allowed to be whatever you want them to be, and to know that there are infinite possibilities and things within the universe. And so if there's a person for you, which there is, I believe, I think that there's this thing about soulmates. I believe we might have multiple soulmates and they might just exist in different, planes and spaces or realms, even whatever. But I believe you get to set your standard that you want. And again, it comes down to we'll find ourselves in these situations where we're settling and it's good enough, when the reality is, in my personal opinion, my thought process is we're all destined for greatness when we believe that we are. And that 100% changes the way that you show up in the world. It changes the way that, you interact with people or the people that you come in contact with when you hold yourself to a standard. And I think maybe part of like what you're trying to maybe get at this question is the standards of men. And I believe that first and foremost, we need to have a standard for ourselves. And then it becomes, hey, if you vibe at this level, you want to attract and you're going to attract someone else at that level.
Yeah. So what you told me there is that you're actually a lot more spiritual maybe than you let on, because that was quite a spiritualistic response there. So that's good. But
Oh, I'm super witchy.
no, that's good. No, of course I think we've lost a lot of that in society nowadays. So that's really, really important that you do that. So you're talking from more of an energetic point of view in some ways, which
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
finding someone who matches you on an energetic level, and maybe you're less concerned with demographical circumstances like finance and height and all the things that people are throwing around nowadays.
It's the It's the superficial things that get us so caught up. And so when I was going on dates and I would show my friends, like, hey, I'm going out with this person, they're like, Yolanda, none of them look the same. And I'm like, yeah, they're not going to, because for me, it's an energetic connection. Obviously, there has to be some sort of physical attraction. But for me, I want to know, hey, does this person have enough space to hold my energy? Like, I'm like, free spirited, a little wild. It takes a very specific person to be able to hold that energy. And I think that that's the question that we need to be asking ourselves when we're meeting people, when we're dating people, is can they hold my energy and can I hold their energy? And it has to be an energetic match for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Traditionally, so you've got chaos and order, which is like the black and white ring, like circle thing, like you see
Mm-hmm.
the Taoist symbol. So that's yin and yang, and then it's also all these polarities. So yin and yang, masculine, feminine, and femininity. I think feminine is yang, and masculinity is yin. Yin. I'm not sure, but femininity is associated with chaos, and not in a bad sense. Not chaos meaning a bad sense, meaning chaos is where all new things are found, which makes sense because women, new things come from women, and chaos is also that which controls order. And if order is represented as masculine, then the feminists that want to bring down the patriarchy, that also makes complete sense. And you, I can tell, have got a lot of free flowing feminine spirit, so that's good. That's what you want. What is your yeah? What is your opinion on dating apps?
I love them.
You
I
love
think
them.
when we go back to, when we go back to this idea, here, I'm going to tell you a great story. When we go back to this idea of there being infinite possibilities, I have so many women that I really want to just meet somebody organically or out in the wild. And it's like, okay, you can go do that, but are you going out? Are you putting yourself in positions? Are you being friendly and approachable? Are you putting yourself together just even when you're in the grocery store to energetically attract these things that you say that you want? And so for me, the way that I used dating apps was just a space for connection, a space to speed up potential connections that I would not otherwise have. And just even having my face on dating apps, interesting things would happen. There was a day that I was in my local grocery store. And again, this is an energetic thing. I'm very energetically drawn or attracted to people. And there was a man that was behind me in the grocery store. And I turned around as we're checking out, and like we kind of locked eyes in a really interesting way. And the next day he was in my Hinge and he was like, I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't get your phone number in the grocery store yesterday. Like, explain that, right? You're increasing your chances of meeting people. And actually the man that I'm dating now, we connected last December, never met. Our conversation kind of fell off. We were both traveling in Arizona and he saw me at the airport in Arizona, never told me this, never texted me, never reached out. And we didn't actually end up connecting until April of this year. And we've been together almost now for 4 months. Just weird.
Yeah, I know someone who the same sort of what's the word, surreptitious or whatever, same thing happened.
Synchronous.
Yes, synchronicity. Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, yeah. That's really good. Yeah, yeah. So you met in an airport, and then how did you start contacting each other? Did you match on?
No, we didn't even meet.
Oh, you
No,
didn't
we
meet.
didn't even
Okay.
meet in the airport. It was just, he just saw me and he was with his friends on a trip and he's like, oh my gosh, I think I've matched with that girl on a dating app
Oh wow.
before. But we never connected. It was months and months later. So, I think when it comes to dating, it's about being open minded to however it might show up. And something that really would turn me off when it came to being on dating apps where men would have things in their bio that we can tell your grandma that we met at the library or something like that. And, the times are changing. The world is revolutionizing. The way that we're doing things is changing. We have all this technology right at our fingertips. And I do believe that there's a way to use dating apps and not necessarily use them to be this like dopamine hit or
Hmm.
fix. And, again, to me, it just increases your chances of somebody potentially seeing your face, remembering you, and seeing you out in the wild. I've done that. I've been at bars, or pubs, maybe as you all say, and then like, oh, hey, I think I've seen you on a dating app before. And it's somebody that I never matched with. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, me too. Like, it's nice to meet you.
That's a really good point, actually. It's like an icebreaker, isn't it? You can go up to someone and say, "I've seen you on a dating app." Um, yeah, that's really.
Yeah.
Is Do you have Hinge and Bumble in America, or is it just Tinder? What are the big ones in
No,
America?
we have Hinge. Yeah, so in America, we have Hinge, we have Bumble, we have Tinder. Those were the ones that I was on. We have Field, Feeld. Have you ever
Yeah,
heard of that one?
it rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Field. There's Raya, there's the League. And I think with dating apps, people have these generalizations or stereotypes of, hey, if you're on Tinder, you're just looking to hook up, or if you're on Hinge, it's to get married. And my thought process is, again, it's just people being themselves on these apps. And you can have a great person on Tinder that you might meet, and you can have a crappy narcissistic man that you might meet on Hinge, you know?
Yep, that is very true. I think I think dating apps are interesting. I think one of the biggest problems with dating apps is kind of what I said earlier. Like, women do get a lot more matches than men, and I think it's hard for men because as in a when it because the nature of dating apps are not completely, but in the beginning they're superficial, and all you do is see is a photo of someone and a little bit of a bio. It's not necessarily that's all it can be. You can build credible relationships, and I've known people that have through dating apps. But when you reduce someone to a photo, because women are less visually stimulated than men, they need more. I guess you need to be ridiculously good looking, or ridiculous, have lots of money, or have like a PhD, or all these things that have been proven to get you more matches. Whereas with a woman, if you put in a photo where you look attractive, it's unfortunately because men can be superficial in the way that they use online dating. This is only from the first glance of swiping left and right. I think it leads to a bit of an inequality, and women can get overwhelmed with too much unwanted attention, actually, and they're like, I don't want all this attention. And then men can get underwhelmed with not enough attention, and it's not evenly spread out. But I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I don't really know how you, because in social media is the exact same. It facilitates the same. How many followers you've got is a big status thing. So it's complicated.
Yeah.
What is your?
Yeah, I
Yeah, no,
go
carry on,
ahead.
carry on.
I feel like though we could argue meeting someone in the bar, what's the difference? There's this physical attraction to them that's pulling you towards that person, right? So and we're less likely inclined now to, I don't know how it might be in the UK, but men are way far less likely um
Approach.
to approach a woman.
Mhm.
And so it's like, to me, the dating app takes off that pressure of, okay, well, we're both here with some sort of intention of connecting with people. And so for men that might be listening to this, if we know that women are not as visually stimulated, the way that you can win on a dating app, in my personal opinion, is to put some substance into the bio, right? Have pictures that are attractive, because yes, even as women, we still are going off
Yeah,
of
of
that
course.
first, like, what does he look like? And then maybe looking at the height. I'm super petite. I'm 4'9", so everyone's always taller than me. That never matters. Um, so, looking at things like that. But if a man that would have substance in his bio, to me, would be like, oh my God, this is a freaking gold mine. And the same thing goes for women. I think as a woman, don't put every single attractive photo of yourself on a dating app. What do you look like when you don't have makeup on? What do you look like? How is this man going to see you in 3, 4, 5 months from now? And so I think there is a mix of like, yeah, have that first photo that's like, boom, it's the popper, and then make sure you're also intertwining like some average looking photos of yourself too.
Yeah, be more genuine. That's a good point. Uh,
Yeah.
you think I'm just gonna push back on one little thing you said. You talked about an energetic connection. Isn't meeting someone in a bar, you're able to feel that energetic connection, which you can't feel over a dating app?
I would say yes and no. I think some people have energy that jumps off of profiles. That's a very sensing thing. I don't know that everyone feels energy in the same way, but I think that for some of us we can feel it. And I think women inherently are just a little bit more intuitive in that sense, where we might be able to pick up on that in ways that you can't. And that's something that people would always say to me. Men would say this. They're like, "Oh, there's just something about your energy from my bio." And all they've seen now are words and photos. So I think that energy can be felt. It's just a matter of maybe some of us are more tapped in and sensing of it versus some of us just aren't, or we're disconnected from that sensing side of ourselves.
That's really good. Change the topic, not really, but kind of. What is your opinion on the pill, birth control
The birth control,
pill?
I think it's toxic.
Yeah.
I think it's poisonous to women's bodies. I obviously have been on birth control. I was on birth control from probably the time that I was 16. Yeah, 16, 17 to about 28 or so. And it wasn't even this conscious decision of like, oh, I feel like I'm poisoning my body. I was starting to make some changes. I had moved. I didn't get a gynecologist in my new place right away. And then when I met my ex partner, he actually had a vasectomy. So worrying about pregnancy was no longer an issue for me. It was great. Yeah.
But the pill is quite a hell of a thing, isn't it? There's this great study that's shown that women, when they're not on the pill, they can. You know what I'm going to try to say? Do you know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, you're going to say, because I was actually going to mention this, that there's a study that's done that your attraction changes when you're on birth control versus when you're not, because it's synthetic hormones versus your natural primal instinct.
Women smell pheromones. It's kind of debated if we could actually detect pheromones, but I would say it shouldn't be, because if we couldn't, then I don't think perfume and aftershave would be such a big thing. There's obviously something about smell that is related to evolution. So women can smell something to do with a man's immune system, and they're looking for whoever has the least similar immune system to them to create children that have the most widely expanded resistance, I guess, and built up immune system. And the pill reverses that. So the pill makes you look for or find men attractive who have very similar immune systems to you. So that's quite weird. I don't really know how that works, obviously, because I'm not a scientist, but that's and it can fuck women's mental health up and all sorts of things. So it's not great. How are you doing? Are you okay?
Not a fan of it. Not a fan of it. And if you can, there's so much that once you really get to know your body that you can do to prevent pregnancy. We can't get pregnant 30 days out of every single month. There's like this little window, and if you track your temperatures and your cycles and things like this, that you can do it without needing to be on birth control. My partner and I now, we don't use birth control. I'm not on birth control, and as far as I know, I'm fertile, apparently, according to a fertility test I recently took. So yeah, you just take the right precautions of, just knowing your body. And I think too, when we stop putting all that like garbage into our bodies, like you really start to be able to hear your inner voice and your inner knowing and trust it.
Yeah. There's so there's two things. One, um, going back to the fertility thing, are you interested in having kids or not? Is that
Uh,
nailed?
yeah, well, it's interesting because I'm becoming older, but for as long as I can remember, I never really wanted to have kids. Always was really attracted to the idea of adopting children. And now that I've met my partner, that I'm currently dating, it's it's so cliche, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I think I want to have a kid with him, just one,
Yeah.
and then adopt another. Yeah.
That's a good. I work with
So
them. Yeah. That's really good.
yeah,
Yeah. I think you'd be a good mum. So definitely, I would, if that's possible,
yeah,
consider that. And the other thing that
yeah.
I saw this on your Instagram, you talked about, and maybe you mentioned it earlier, but you talked about your inner guide. I've talked about this on another podcast, so what does the inner guide to me? Because I downloaded your affirmation thing today, had a little listen to your affirmation thing. Very, very good. I like that.
Oh,
I love the
thanks.
bit where you said, I can't remember, but it was good. And you said something along the lines of your intuition is like your most powerful asset or your best friend or something like that. And I thought that was really brilliant. So can you go into that a bit? Do you remember saying that?
Yeah, I don't remember saying that.
Well,
Those
that's
are
good.
things that like
That means
yeah,
that you were
they're
driven by
things that
your
just
intuition to say it because you can't remember saying it, meaning it wasn't conscious.
right. There are things, or there have been moments of time in my life where just things will come to me and I'm like, oh, interesting. And they're very unexplainable, and it's those little knives or that little voice that's there, and you're like,
Mm.
wait, like what? That doesn't even make sense. And it becomes about learning to trust that and to listen to it and to allow that to guide you, and not necessarily it always being this really like ego driven space that we often are coming from for so much of our lives. And so I think for me, I have a degree in biology. So there's this piece of me that's super analytical and wants to understand the science of everything. And then there's this piece that's like just very airy and flowy and believes in the magic and the universe and the stars and all of this stuff. And so some people will call this woo woo. But I think at the same rate, it's some people will call that God, right? It's the
Yeah.
thing that's speaking to you all the time. It's about, do you shut down your ego or shut up your ego enough to listen to it?
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. We have lost our relation with what it's now been stereotyped as woo woo and fanciful and magic, and actually it's most of it, maybe not all of it, but most of it isn't, and there's actually some real truth and utility into it. And you said something really interesting, which is, you said part of you is a very analytical and part of you is very creative and ephemeral, I guess, and woo, or whatever you said. And that is brilliant. That's the human brain. The human brain. The reason we've got two halves of a brain is because one half does what sees the world one way, the other half sees the world the other way, and then together we navigate ourselves through life, sort of taking a bit from each. And you need two ways to see the world, and it comes back to the yin and yang. So that's really good. What's your relation to religion? You don't have to answer if you want to. It's a heavy question.
I have no relation to it.
But you
No,
just
it's
said
okay.
God,
I'm
though.
very open about this. I said that some people call their
Okay.
intuition God, like that voice is God.
Very good.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I I've never grown up in church. It was not something that my mom forced me to do. I've had moments where I wonder, like, oh, should I get into it? But I think that for me, I don't need this thing to guide me. I am guided by whatever it is that guides me. And I just think that religion sometimes gives people this out for their actions, or, you're a good person because you go to church and this, that, and the other. And yeah, I just personally don't just subscribe to anything. If anything, maybe there's like Buddhist kind of like thought processes that I have, but I don't follow or subscribe to anything in particular. I just have my thoughts and know that there's something that's working and guiding and making all these things and also looking out for us. But I don't know that I explain that as quote a religion.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's utility, and quite often, in my experience, some of the people who say that they're religious act in the least religious way, and the people who don't say they're religious act in a religious way, which is what you just
Sure.
said. So that's very true, 100%. And it's important to have some kind of relationship with the divine, but it doesn't really matter what that divine is. It doesn't have to be religious. It can be whatever. So that's really good. 45 minutes. Right. Can we talk a bit about mental health? Is that something that you've struggled with, or is that not really a relevant thing? I wouldn't be surprised if you
It's
said
not really a struggle with me.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not really a struggle, although, sometimes you hear of like really happy people that are super depressed, right? Um I think that I have my days where I'm a little down, but there's never been any deep dark spaces of my life personally that I've had to deal with. I have gone to therapy, but it wasn't necessarily for a mental health thing. It was really just trying to figure out and navigate why I
Yeah.
was the way that I was and trying to make sense of that. So, never been on an antidepressant, never had an anti-anxiety medication, don't really have OCD. I do have a little bit of ADHD. I have a prescription for Adderall, but I hate how it makes me feel. So I don't like taking that, and it makes me a little scattered. Sometimes I'm a little messy, which again can all be signs of things. But and for the most part, I feel that I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person, and just looking to work on myself all the time and become a better version of me. But not something that I've really felt like I've struggled with.
No, that's really good. I think a lot of us have different ways of regulating ourselves, and I reckon you regulate yourself through being you and helping others and being extroverted and speaking what you believe to be true, which is really
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
That's why you started off as a nurse, because the desire to help people, and now that's why you're doing what you're doing now. So that's really good, 100%. Um,
Thank you.
have you got any questions? I know I don't want to. I know it's been quite an intense conversation, so I think maybe
No,
um,
you're
this is. Are you all right to stop here? Do you want to keep going? What you decide?
I'm great. I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out. And for your listeners, I also have a podcast which is called The Conscious Hoe. So
Yes.
come hang out with me there or on Instagram. Instagram's my favorite place to hang out, and
Yep.
I love just connecting with people. And if we can tie and wrap this thing up and looking at dating and how it just relates to so much of life, is technology is powerful, and we would not be having this conversation if it weren't for technology. And
Good.
in dating, it's the same thing. Use the power of the apps, but just be mindful that you are prioritizing yourself, your energy, you're doing your inner work, you're going to the gym, you're eating well, you're not drinking or doing drugs all the time, and that you are working to become that best version of yourself and someone that is open to everything that life has to offer for
Yeah, I think that's really good. Try and utilize the benefits. Or are you frozen?
you. No, I think froze.
Is she back? Am I frozen? Are you there? Yeah, you're there.
You there?
You're back.
Yeah, there you
Yeah. Try and utilize the benefits of social media and not get too bogged down with the cons, and to have self-awareness and self-reflection, which is something that I think you've said self-reflection quite a few times today, which is really,
go.
I think that may be what is separates you from certain people in a lot of ways, and is that you've learned to really value self-reflection and to re-navigate yourself depending on what you take away from your self-reflection. So that's very important. That's a great idea. Right. So what I'll do now is I'll do a little ending and I'll click stop recording, but don't leave because we'll just chat for a little bit afterwards. So perfect. Awesome, guys. Thank you for watching another episode of the Breaking Point podcast with Yolanda Russell. And I've had a great time. Have you had a good time, Yolanda?
This was an awesome time. It was a great way to kickstart my day. I appreciate you.
Brilliant. Of course it was, because it's the beginning of the day for you, isn't it? Yes. I appreciate you doing this in the morning when you probably rather be in bed or doing something else. So awesome. And I will leave your Instagram to your own Instagram and the Conscious Hoe podcast Instagram in the description and in my Instagram link. And yes, go and check it out, guys. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next one.